All right, we are live now. So it took me a bit of time to get it set up because technology, you know. So, anyways, I'm waiting for people to join in the online chat. Oh, what a beautiful bird out there. I see people are joining in right now. Welcome, everyone. I think at this point you can chat on the side so we can say hello, everyone. Yeah, so we can chat on the side. I hope you guys are staying safe from the coronavirus, social distancing. Let's see, we got more people coming in. Please do tell your class fellows that this is the way how we're going to do this. So I believe 35, 36 people subscribe to the channel. Um, but we do have more people who should be joining us. So just send a message out to all those people who have not, who might not have received it, to come in and join us online. While we're waiting for the rest of the guys to join in, I'm just going to see if my slideshow is working. Yeah, okay, that seems to be working. Um, so how's it going, guys? I hope you guys are enjoying chilling at home. Well, I think it's been a bit too long now. Yeah, getting stuck at home for the last few weeks has been rather boring. We talked about this, I think, in the beginning of the semester, where we were talking about how I wanted to record my lectures and post them online, but the world has a funny way of doing things, and we end up, being forced to do this. And it's interesting, all of the faculty members, you'll see them becoming uh, YouTubers and live streamers and stuff. I've got a huge setup here actually. It took me a while to set it up because the camera I had on my PC was not really very good quality. Um, so what I wanted to do was connect my DSLR to my system. I don't know what kind of quality you're getting in the video, but the video quality with the um, was really poor. So I connected that DSLR. Yeah, another option we have with this is Zoom. Besides the YouTube Live, but the problem is a lot of people who I spoke to, they said for this it'll be better to do it this way. What we can do is for after the actual lecture, we can do question and answer session, and we can take that on Zoom. All right, so we got good number of people. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll kick off now. A couple of things I wanted to discuss with you guys. First of all, what I'll do is um, during our class timings, I will be posting, this online live. I will be doing the live thing on YouTube. Um, so when you join in, if you have subscribed to it and you've clicked on that bell button, which should give you notifications, you will get a notification when I'm live on the YouTube. So the actual lecture bit, we'll do it online live on YouTube. Um, After that, we will do like a question and answer session. Perhaps we'll take that on a different platform like Zoom or something. And what I'll be doing, not for this class, but from next class onwards, is on the LMS, I'll be posting an assignment or an exam, something of that sort. So that is just for us to see who's actually watched the video or joined us in the online classroom and actually studied. Because just because you guys are at home, um it does not mean things should be changed too different. So we want to do that. So the grading bit for this course, because now uh, does not look like we will have final exams or anything of that sort. So the grading bit, we will have to do it, um, through other means. So one was the project, which I'll talk about in a short while. The second one, I think we'll be doing weekly, um, online exams or projects or something of that sort. So those will go online on your LMS, which everyone should have access to with their logins and passwords. Now, in terms of the projects, how far are we on the projects? So just on the chat, if different groups can tell me, how much work they've done and how much of an extension you'd like on your project. LMS is not working. Imran, sorry, Ikram, भाई कह रहे हैं कि LMS is not working. Uh, so if the LMS is not working, okay, so can you not log in to the LMS, or what seems to be the problem? So I guess what we need to do is we need to think about uh, what could be the alternative uh, to this. Um, Obviously, technology has problems. This morning, when I was trying to set it up, uh, I was having problems going live on YouTube. Um, so technology does have its issues. Yesterday was working perfectly fine. So we've got some people. Muhammad Asadullah project is almost 70% complete. Shariar working on report. Although presentations are the thing. Uh, for the presentations, that's a good one. I think presentations will have to do it online, something of this sort, YouTube Live or something of that sort. Maybe a Zoom presentation, uh, but we'll figure it out as we go. Yes, the project was on hotels. A lot of the hotels are closed. Yes, I understand that. Um, so what you can do is you can get the information online on the web, on the websites. Whatever information you can get, try to put that incorporated into your projects. Presenting in groups. That's again a good question. Again, I think um we'll have to figure out a way. YouTube Live does not let you do that. So what we might do is give groups different options. Perhaps one option would be if you guys uh, create a video. So each individual person does one bit of their project, and then somebody has to collect all 4 or 5 videos and merge them together. That could be one option. The second option would be using Zoom. Zoom allows multiple people to go online at the same time and have different videos, so a number of people can do it. It's up to you guys. I think these are, you know, at this point in time, these are two options I can think of. Submission date, Saad is asking now. So, question is, how much more time do you guys want? Right? Originally, I think it was due on the 13th of April, right? So, what we'll do is, instead of 13th of April, should we shift it down to by 3 weeks? Because those 3 weeks is what we lost, right? That would make it the 4th of May. 4th May, okay. Uh, so we have a few votes for 4th of May. That's like 3 weeks from now, or 4 weeks from now. Anybody else? Those people who doing it, who said they're 50% done on their projects, Muhammad Sameem and Malik Abdullah. What do you guys think? So we've got a few people who are saying 4th of May. All good? Okay, good. I think that's done. 4th of May should be uh, the target for us for the uh, project submission date. Um, and in terms of the presentations, let's see. Let's work on this. We will um, look at the different options. Uh, those people. Has anybody here tried Zoom yet? Anyone tried Zoom? No. Try Zoom.com and have a look see how it works. I will try to get you guys to do this maybe uh, next um week or something. So we'll give it a shot next week to see how Zoom works. Because you see, the thing is, now we are um in an era, I think, where the future is going to be all digital. Future is going to be all online, and because it's all going to be online, we have to get used to doing things, digitally. You have to get used to doing things online. Um, so we all need to learn how to use the technology um to do presentations, for learning, for meetings, for job, for whatever. Uh, a lot of people I know now are working from home. A lot of major companies all around the world, people are working from home. So it'll be good idea for those of you who are not um, used to technology and used to um, you know uh, these type of uh, technologies, to get yourself familiarized with these things. Um, we can do a class on Zoom, or what I was planning on doing was the question and answer sessions on Zoom. So we use the YouTube live because this will record it, and it'll save it in one place. Um, and then we use the Zoom to um, do the question and answer sessions. So we will try different technologies to see what works, and give it a shot. Okay, is everyone all set? Yeah, Saad, um, whoever's mission it was, but we are most certainly using more technology now for everything. Okay, guys. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kick off on uh, the lecture bit. Right? Can you all see the screen on the upper corner? Um, it should be somewhere here. There, the presentations. Right? Um, you should have copies of these with you. If you don't have them, um, I believe we posted these on WhatsApp. If you don't have them, I will post these on WhatsApp. For everyone to download, and then you can follow these as we go along. Okay, I think we'll kick off with the lecture, and then we will do um, question and answers sessions and stuff later. Right? Okay, so today we're talking about subcultures and the impact of subcultures um, on marketing, right? This is from the Consumer Behavior book by Schiffman et al. Subcultures and the impact on um, marketing. So when we talk about a subculture, what exactly is a subculture? We had talked about cultures previously, right? And a culture is obviously um, defined as a group of people who have shared common characteristics and stuff. Um, oh goodness, can you guys just give me 2 seconds? This is the problem of working from home. We got people coming in and out. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll be back. Can Is there a way of pausing this? I'm just trying to see. Is there a way of pausing this? No. Okay, I'll just be back in a second. So sorry, guys. Working from home business, uh, quite funny. um, I don't know if you've seen that picture, the video of that guy who's doing like an interview on CNN or BBC or something, and his kids all came inside. So yeah, I've got uh, the bunny wala come inside um, to deliver water and stuff. So yeah, where were we? um, okay, so we were talking about subcultures, right? And the impact of subcultures on marketing. So, a subculture really is a distinct cultural group that exists as an identifiable segment within a larger or more complex society. So, think of any country and any particular culture that may exist within that particular um, culture that may exist in that particular um, country or in that particular organization. So in this case, we look at, say, for example, um, you know, the French and the English-speaking Canadians, right? So there's a common culture that exists in Canada, for example, and um, common characteristics are shared by both the French-speaking as well as the English-speaking Canadians. However, there are certain characteristics and certain traits which only the French will have, and then certain characteristics and certain traits that only the Canadians will have, the English speaking Canadians will have. Similarly, if you look at the United States, you've got many different subcultural groups. So the Americans as a whole, they have a certain culture. But then there's many different subdivisions between them. So people in the Northeast, for example, will have certain characteristics as compared to those living in, say, for example, California, or someone who lives in the Midwest, and so on and so forth. In England or the United Kingdom, for example, we have quite similar sort of thing, um, where um, people who live in, say, for example, the big metropolitan cities like London, will have a certain subculture, certain traits, which maybe people living up north in Scotland might not have. And people in Scotland might have certain characteristics which people in Wales might not have. So each country, each region will have a subculture which will dictate the way how people behave within that. Now, for example, we look at religious as a subculture. Again, this particular slide is from Canada, where they look at the different type of religions and how they impact um, the culture in uh, Canada. So in Canada, for example, 43% Catholics, 35% Protestants, and then some minority groups which includes Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs and stuff. Religion does impact, obviously, your culture because it dictates the type of food people eat, the ceremonies that they, um, attend and celebrate, the type of goods they buy, and so on and so forth. So religion becomes a major part of the subculture. Consumer behavior is obviously directly affected by religion. So the products that we buy uh, if you look at, say, the Hindus, for example, who are mostly vegetarian, they will not be going out to buy a Big Mac. They'll be more keen on purchasing vegetarian products. So, big restaurant chains, for example, in countries which have got a large Hindu population, um, would want to have products which do not have any beef in it. Similarly, um, Muslims and Jews, they eat halal and kosher meat. In the United Kingdom, we see, because of a growing Muslim population there, you see a lot of stores, a lot of restaurants, a lot of supermarkets act on the subculture of a particular country. Obviously, those religious groups living in a particular country, to you celebrate the 4th of July. That's their Independence Day. Um, so they're common ones, and then based on the religion that you follow, there might be other ones that you follow. Um, so again, if you look at regional differences in subculture, um, when we look at the difference between the United States and Canada, and when somebody who's not been there, somebody who does not meet with them, to us they all sound quite similar, and a lot of Canadians, they'll correct you as soon as you say, "Are you American?" They're like, "No, we are actually Canadian. We're not American." And I think that's the same thing as when somebody meets somebody from South Asia. Um, People from outside South Asia think that everyone is Indian, but then you meet somebody, it's like, "Hey, are you Indian?" They're like, "No, wait, we're from Sri Lanka or Nepal or Pakistan or Bangladesh or whatever." Um, because the cultures in all of these countries are obviously different. And then within these countries, you do have a lot of differences in cultures, in terms of subcultures. So, if you look at the American and the Canadian markets, for example, they're talking about British Columbia, which is a again, you have similar type of things where people living in certain regions will have different subcultures. Um, Interestingly, what the research says, the subcultural differences in Canada are less pronounced as compared to the US. So in the United States, you have got greater variations in the subculture. Perhaps because the population of the US is a whole lot more than Canada. I don't know. That could be one of the reasons. But these are important things for marketers to know when we are trying to sell our products and our services to people living in different countries, and around the world. So if you look at this um, matrix here, um, and we're looking at the regions of North America on a socio-cultural map. As you'll notice, the US, um, it's relatively more on one side of um, the matrix, where um, you know places like the Deep South um, are more towards security and stuff, whereas the Canadians, on the other hand, are on the other side of things. And then there are regions of the US which are quite similar to them in the sense, um, their cultures are quite similar to the cultures of uh, generally more Canadian ones. So if you look at the side where the Canadian map is, you have regions like British Columbia, Quebec, Ontario, so on and so forth. But the New England, which is actually a part of the United States, Northeast United States, the culture there is more closer, the subculture there is more closer to that of these Canadian regions. So yes, you can have areas within a country whose subcultures will be more closely related to um, an adjacent country, for example. We can look at Europe, and Europe is quite similar to this, where, say, for example, if you look at France, France is bordered by many different countries. And sometimes you'll find that those people who live in the border areas of France with Spain will have more in common with those people who live in Spain than they would have with those people who live in France, and vice versa. So a subculture, uh, these things are very important for us to know within the subculture, because then we can know how to market to those people, how to sell to those people. Again, moving on, the regional subcultures, when we look at, again, these are all examples from Canada and from the United States. They're talking about Atlantic Canadians. These are people who live on the Atlantic coast, and those on the prairies are slightly more traditional than others. And similarly, we have to look at really every country, individually, every region individually, to see what type of differences exist. These are just some examples, again, from Canada and from the United States, which look at what are the key differences. Okay. Um, Obviously, regional subcultures, there might be contradictions that exist. Um, for example, again, they're talking about people who live on the Atlantic coast, although they have, you know, things which are similar to those on the prairies. They also have a strong egalitarian streak, score higher than average on gender parity, hierarchy, and rejection of order, so on and so forth. And obviously, consumption differences exist. Um, I'm not going to go too much into detail with this, because this is very much based on the Canadian example. But this just gives you an idea of um, what are the different um, subcultures in Canada, and how do they differ. Okay, so for example, in this slide, we can see food consumption or consumption related issues. Okay, um, so we talk about made their meal from scratch during the past 7 days. Okay, so interestingly, the average for Canada is 27%, but provinces that score low go down to 16%, and provinces that score high go up to 32%. If you go down, for example, have not eaten in a restaurant and had a fast food meal in the past 7 days. So one region has goes up to 74%, whereas another region, which is close to the average, is 52%. So you have variations in one region versus another region, and for marketers to know things of this sort, how do the customers behave, the subculture, how does that impact the behavior of consumers, we can then use that um, to um, understand how to market, how to sell uh, goods and services um, across the world, or in different countries that we're marketing our products and services in. Um, Again, this is more information about that. What sort of stuff is happening. Um, to give you more examples of this, for example, eat breakfast, or what do we eat for breakfast, for example. The national drink in places like the United Kingdom, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka is tea. And people normally drink tea for breakfast, and then they drink tea during the day, all the way down to tea time, and some people even drink tea at dinner time. However, when we look at the metropolitan cities in all these regions, so the metropolitan cities in um, the United Kingdom, for example, in London, you'll find that the number one drink is no longer tea. It has changed to coffee. So, as a subculture, because London is a big metropolitan city, people have a very fast lifestyle. They have little time. They have to spend a lot of time traveling. somehow coffee over the last few decades has overtaken tea as the main drink for breakfast. However, if you go up north um, to the smaller cities, you'll find tea continues to be the number one drink for breakfast. Similarly, if we look across, the South Asian subcontinent, which makes up, I think, 1.5 billion people or so, you will find that in the metropolitan cities, there's a big trend where people are drinking more coffee now as compared to tea. Even though countries like India and Sri Lanka, they grow a lot of tea. Hence, obviously, they drink a lot of tea. However, there's a big trend in the big metropolitan cities where people are now drinking more coffee. It might not necessarily be for breakfast, but during the day, people are meeting up in coffee shops, and then when you meet up in a coffee shop, you're having more tea. Again, this is a some it's a subculture which you'll find in metropolitan uh, you know cities around the world, and in this case, in the subcontinent, which shares the culture with the United Kingdom. Um, so major eight subcultures. Okay, we've got some of these are listed here. Uh, the senior market are people generally who were born before the 1945s, before World War II. Uh, you've got the baby boomers, Generation X, and the Y market. So Gen Y, now the different ways of looking at the age category. Um, Usually, different researchers say they're people who were born between 1977 and 1994. Sometimes these people can be referred to as a millennium generation. Um, so what they've done is they've taken this generation and subdivided this generation into three categories: Gen Y adults, teens, and tweens. Um, you have Generation X, which was born a little earlier than that, so between 65 and 79. Again, different researchers will categorize these slightly differently. So these dates are not 100% fixed, 65, 79. You might find some people going from a 1960 to 1980 sort of a thing. Similarly, for Gen Y, those dates can change around a bit, maybe from 1980 onward or something of that sort. So the millennium, for example, generation really um, is again, there are different definitions for this. Different researchers have come up with different figures for these things. Um, and then we got the baby boomers. These were people who were born between 46 roughly and 64. And in a country like the US, Canada, many European countries, they make up a large percentage of the population there. Obviously, in developing countries, you will find that a larger percentage would be the Generation X, and perhaps even a larger generation would be Generation Y people. Uh, so this is an important category for uh, countries like the United States, Europe, because they make up a large percentage of the people. Uh, so these are the people who tend to have more money. These are people who've got more disposable income. So when companies are thinking of selling products and services in Europe or North America, they would consider the baby movers as an important segment. Um, and the type of products and services they buy will be different, obviously, than the products and services than, say, Generation X or Y would be purchasing. Obviously, because these people have a larger disposable income, they will be more likely to spend money on more luxury products, more holidays, more international holidays, uh, uh, buying furniture, cars, more luxury cars, bigger cars, as compared to, say, somebody who's a millennial or Generation Y, for that example. Um, Older consumers, these are people who were born before 1945. So this is what we call the senior segments. Um And again, their population is relatively small, and it is reducing. A lot of these people, the type of products that they're most likely interested in would be medical related, healthcare related products and services. So that's an important segment. Again, they might not have as much money, but most certainly these are, it is an important segment when we are thinking of selling to Western Europe, North America. Japan, for example, has got a big percentage of people who are in the older consumer um, segment. In developing countries, that percentage is usually much smaller than uh, the Western countries. Okay. When we talk about sex or gender as a subculture, uh, so how masculine or feminine people are, what are the traits? For example, if we go back, you know, 10, 15 years, um, mostly around the world, you would not find men wearing pink, right? That was considered as a feminine thing. But now, the especially in Europe, for example, we've seen this big trend of pink coming in as a popular color. Even men are wearing it. So we can say, you know, based on the traits that people might have, which were traditionally considered as masculine or traditionally considered as feminine, you've got different markets that you're looking at. Similarly, on the other hand, if we consider playing sports, for example, as more masculine traits, again going back 15, 20, even 30 years ago, you would not find a lot of women taking part in a lot of sports and physical activities and so on and so forth. However, we've seen over the last few decades, and more so in the past 10 years or so, uh, there's a lot more women coming in into sports, and women's sports are becoming more popular. So the professional leagues in football, in cricket, um, and other sports, you'll see a lot more women coming in the professional side of sports. Now, traditionally, these were considered as masculine and feminine traits, but now we see there's a shift, and in some countries, that shift is much stronger. In other countries, that shift is much lesser. So, in a lot of African countries, still women have got a very traditional role as compared to men. Whereas in a lot of the Western countries, you see that those roles are kind of merging. Uh, and then you have countries in between where there are shifts that are taking place. So in a lot of developing countries, you do see those shifts that are taking place. Obviously, that impacts your shopping patterns and stuff. Traditionally, shopping was seen as more of a feminine thing. And when we looked at research, say 10, 15 years ago, we would find that, uh, you know, the amount of time women spend on shopping is a lot more than the time men spend on shopping. The amount of money that women spend on shopping is a lot more than the amount of money that men spend on shopping. However, those traditional roles are kind of slowly decreasing, and things are changing. However, as a marketer, it's important for us to know these factors. So if we know, for example, in one country, um, women do more shopping for clothes, for example. So in developing country like Pakistan, we've seen a lot of local brands come up who are selling traditional clothes, as well as Western clothes as well. Um, so marketers know that because women spend more on clothing than men, what you'll find is many more brands are focused towards women as compared to men. So if you look at the market, you'll see many brands that focus only on women's clothing. There's many, much more fewer brands that focus only on men's clothing, and then there's some brands in between that sell both men's and women's clothing. However, when you visit those brands, you'll find that section of clothing for men is much smaller than the section of clothing for women, because in Pakistan, people, men spend less money on purchasing clothes than women do. So because marketers know this, they are able to target their segments more smart, in a more smart way. Um Similarly, in other countries, we've got different examples of these type of things. Um, so there was an interesting one where um, we looked at the gender roles. So their sports goods manufacturers are now focusing more in Western countries. You do not find a lot of examples of these in developing nations in Africa and so on and so forth, where you have, if you walk into a Nike store or an Adidas store, you will find a lot more products, sports products, um, which are targeted towards women. Unfortunately, because in a lot of the developing countries, that is not the case, where women are not so active in terms of sports. The same brands, Nike and Adidas, do not sell as many sports goods aimed for the women's market or the female market. Um, if we look at the female market, the we can segment it into four broad categories. Again, this is just one way of segmenting it. This is not the definitive way of segmenting it, because in different countries you might have other segmentations that you could look at, other segments that you could look at for the female market. But four broad categories you could do is you can look at the stay-at-home housewives, uh, housewives who are planning to work. Now, this is a big segment in a lot of countries. Um, so what's happened is women who have perhaps been working and they've taken time off from work because they got married, they had kids or whatever, um, and then at one point they want to get back into work. They plan to work again. Interestingly, we might think that the whole of Western Europe would have very few of these type of women, the housewives, the stay-at-home housewives, or the plan to work housewives. But this is an interesting factor. In the United Kingdom, it's a very large percentage where women who have given up work, uh, to raise a family, and then they plan on going back to work. Um, then the next category is just a job working women. So working women who are just doing it as a job, just for making money, just passing time or something, as opposed to on the other end of the scale, working women who are very much career oriented. Um, and for example, we see that working women who are more career oriented, they tend to get married a lot later. They will have kids a lot later. They will have fewer kids as compared to, say, a stay at home housewife. So when we know these things about a particular market, and we can segment our market on the basis of, say, for example, these four segments or other segmentation strategies that we can think of, then we can target our products more appropriately. We can sell, we can target our advertising more appropriately. We will know where to get hold of these people, as in what is the best media to reach these type of people. So perhaps stay-at-home housewives, a better media would be Instagram, for example. But career-oriented women, perhaps the best way to reach them would be on LinkedIn, for example, right? So both of these are social media, but we're using both of these social media to target different segments of the female market in different countries. Um, so now the question is, how does subcultures impact marketing strategy? Um, what we want to do is we want to segment the market using subcultures. Again, we will have to look at each individual market and find out what are the subcultures there, what are the dominant subcultures in a particular market. It could be ethnicity, it could be based on the language that people speak, in a particular country. It could be based on gender. It could be based on lifestyle. It could be based on many other factors that we could look at. Um, and so, what we want to do is we want to identify those subcultures. Based on the subcultures that we've identified, what we want to do is we want to develop our marketing mix where we're targeting those particular subcultures. Uh, so, what are those things? What products are we going to sell to this subculture group? Uh, what pricing strategies are we going to adopt for those things? Uh, so we talked about products already. In terms of pricing strategies, for example, uh, we know that women purchase more shoes. Across the globe, this is a general trend. Women purchase more shoes. Uh, so what normally happens is the price of shoes for women is lower than the price of shoes for men because men are buying fewer shoes, but what happens is men's shoes will last a lot longer. So companies are able to sell higher price shoes to men because they know guy's going to have one pair of black shoes and maybe one pair of brown shoes, and that's it. Uh, Whereas women will have like every single color under the sun, in their closet, in their wardrobes. Um, so women's shoes generally are lower priced as compared to men's shoes. Um, what sort of promotional strategies we are going to use to reach these markets? Um, and where are we going to sell our products to? How are we going to sell our products to these people? Uh, so, because research has found that in many countries, women prefer to go uh, and actually go to the shop when they're shopping, go to the shopping malls. They like roaming around. They like to see things. They like to do window shopping. They spend a lot of time doing that. Men, on the other hand, generally speaking, just like they have something in their mind, they'll go to that particular store, they'll find that particular product, they'll buy it, and then they'll leave. um, Consequently, we found that in many countries around the globe, um, men are doing more shopping online because it is easier. You don't like shopping, you want to avoid doing shopping, so what do? You know what you want to buy, you go online, you place the order, and it comes delivered to your house. Whereas women, because they like shopping in physically going out and doing the shopping, as a percentage, women spend more physically in store as compared to men. Um, and then we want to incorporate members of subcultures in advertising. We've seen that happening all around the world, um, in the US, in the UK, in Europe, and so on and so forth. You do see subcultures coming into advertising. And again, different types of subcultures, different types of subculture groups, but you'll see a lot of those into advertising because then you can ensure that you're including those um, groups of subculture who would go and purchase your products and services. So it's very important for marketers to be aware of the segments within each of the subculture. It helps us to design our marketing strategies in a much better, more efficient way, and um, it makes us better at doing our jobs by knowing the subcultures that exist in a particular region. Okay, so finally, I've got some examples from Canada of subculture. We'll go a bit in more in detail. So examples of subculture in Canada, in terms of ethnic origin, we have the English speaking, the French, the Aboriginal, which were the native people in Canada. And there's the Chinese people, the South Asians. There's a big Sikh population in Canada. There's the Greek, the German, and the Irish. In the United Kingdom, for example, again, you've got the four major groups: the English, the Welsh, the Scottish, and the Irish groups. But then you also have um, large groups of people who who emigrated to the United Kingdom um, after World War II, which includes the South Asians, the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshi people. They're the West Indians, the Caribbean people who live there. And then more recently in the EU era, you've got a lot of people who came in from Europe. So, for example, Polish people. There's a big Polish community in the United Kingdom, and interestingly, now after English, Polish is the second biggest language in the UK. It used to be Welsh, now it is Polish. And then you've got a lot of Eastern European groups who have come and settled in the UK, which make up that ethnic origin. Religion, again, in the UK, you've got uh, the Christians, you got the Muslims, you got the Hindus, you got the Sikhs, you got the Jews, um, and then you have the atheists. For me, atheism is kind of like a religion um, because these guys have certain. It's a subculture, the type of characteristics that the atheists generally tend to have. They'll buy certain type of products. They'll have a certain type of lifestyle generally as compared to somebody who uh, believes in a god or multiple gods. Um, so in this case, we've subdivided culture in Canada. Again, you can subdivide culture in any country on the basis of these factors. And then we've looked at the characteristics of people in Canada and how they impact um the subculture in that thing. So there's French Canadians and the English Canadians. So comparatively, uh, Canadians, French Canadians are more individualistic. They're more liberal. They're more idealistic, more autonomy seeking, and they value work-life balance. Um, Again, there's many more differences within Canada that we can look at. Uh, I will not go too much into detail for this because this is specifically for the Canadian market. But obviously, when we look at how do we market to the French Canadians, if we wanted to sell our products to the French Canadians, there are more differences in media usage, more likely to watch local programs. So the French Canadians are more likely to watch the local French programs. They're less influenced by the US television. So if you were thinking of advertising on American television, the Canadian audience, you probably wouldn't be reaching a lot of the French speaking Canadians. And these guys are more likely to watch television. And then we've got different groups. The Chinese Canadians um, they have a significant buying power. They've spent billions of dollars in Toronto alone. They value high status luxury goods. And I think that's something that's quite common across the Chinese consumers across the globe these days, where they do value high status luxury goods. Even in the United Kingdom, the average Chinese person spends far more than the other consumer groups on luxury products and stuff. They value brand names and they value education and so on and so forth. So these are the differences among the different ethnic groups that are there. The South Asians in Canada are the second largest visible majority. There's a large group of them from India, mostly majority of them are from India, 80%. Within the Indian community, majority of them are the Sikhs from Punjab, who have a very different subculture compared to the other Indians within the whole of India. And you have smaller communities from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Uh, Again, Punjabi language of Punjab, sixth most spoken language in Canada. Again, the Sikhs predominantly speak that, and they're concentrated in certain areas. So if you're going to be advertising to the South Asian population, it might be a good idea to make your ads in Punjabi, for example, or have Punjabi characters in your advertising. Um, and they do have a significant buying power. Uh, in the United Kingdom, also, we find that the Sikh community is the second richest community in the UK. As when we talk about the different religious groups, so the type of product and services they purchase would be a bit different from the product services, say, other groups would be purchasing. So, in conclusion, consumer behavior, we want to look at the um, culture as a whole, because the culture impacts the buying patterns, buying behavior uh, of customers in a particular country or region. But more importantly, we want to look at the subcultures in a country or a region, because subcultures impact the buying patterns as well as the buying patterns that national culture would impact. So finally, what I want to do is I want to talk about Pakistan as an example, looking at all of the subcultures from the Pakistani perspective. So in Pakistan, I think when we look at um the religious groups, right, predominantly mostly Muslim population. So 90 some percent of the people are Muslim. Consequently, there are certain type of products that we buy. There are certain type of holidays that we celebrate. Um, Ramadan is a month where people will be fasting, and obviously there's certain type of things you buy in Ramadan. The sale of um, pakoras and samosas and those type of things and jalebis, they go up in Ramadan. Obviously, the sale of dates goes up in Ramadan because a lot of people are consuming dates during the month of Ramadan. Similarly, if you are into agriculture farming, right, um, you might want to think of raising sheep or goats or whatever, because uh, of the Bakar Eid, where we sacrifice an animal. Uh, and there are companies in Australia, which is on the other side of the globe, really. There are farms in Australia, and these farms only and only they are specialized in raising sheep and goats to sell to the Hajj market in Saudi Arabia. And every year, I believe there's millions of sheep and goats that Australia exports to Saudi Arabia, because these guys have figured out that's a big market, is a big segment, and they can make a lot of money from this particular segment. Um, in terms of ethnicity, we've got a number of ethnic groups in Pakistan. Obviously, we've got the five or six major ethnic groups in the country. But how does that impact the consumer behavior, the buying behavior? Well, we talked about breakfast, for example, and we talk about food, for example. So the more north you go in the country, the lesser spices people use. The more north you go in the country, obviously you're more higher consumption of cheese and dairy products. The more you go down in the south, and the less spices, the more spices people use. Why? Because in the south, it's a much more warmer climate, and research has found that um, spices are good for a hot climate. And obviously, in the north, it's a lot colder. So therefore, you see people are using less spices in their food because in the cold, spices don't really help you in the cold environment. So that's something interesting that's come about from this thing. Um, Obviously, the languages are there. There's a number of languages that are spoken. That's why when you look at the television, uh, I believe there's like 80 or 100 news channels now, just news channels. Um, but uh, besides the Urdu national language news channels, you have a whole lot of news channels which are specific for a particular region in a particular language. For example, I think there's three or four Pashto news channels that I had seen, and I'm sure there's many other channels in other different languages there. So we know culture impacts the different subcultures. Again, certain subcultures in Pakistan are a bit more conservative than other places. So Karachi is uh, or I think used to be the fashion capital of Pakistan. I think perhaps Lahore has kind of overtaken Karachi now, um, as compared to in terms of fashion. But when you talk about fashion, uh, modern fashion or Western fashion, you're more likely to see people in cities like Karachi and Lahore wearing Western wear as compared to somebody who lives in, say, Quetta or Peshawar, which is smaller, relatively more conservative stores. So if you are a fashion brand and you want to sell your clothes in Pakistan across the country, what you'd want to do is you would want to stock different type of clothes in different stores in different cities. So the same brand, what they can do, for example, Khadi. Uh, Khadi's got stores not just in Pakistan, but literally they're all across the globe. In big malls in London, in Dubai, in Middle East, across the world, Khadi's got outlets. But if you're just looking at Pakistan, what Khadi would want to do is, if you have stores in Lahore and Karachi, and perhaps to a lesser extent in Islamabad, you would have more westernized clothes in those stores. Obviously, you will have the traditional clothes as well because there's a market for that, but perhaps a larger percentage of those in uh, places like Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. Um, the same stores, if you have them in Peshawar and you have them in Quetta, you would focus more on the traditional clothes, and perhaps you would have very few or, if any, Western clothes in those stores. Uh, and similarly, brands across the globe, they do these type of things. When they go to different parts of the world, they change their products. Pizza Hut, for example. Uh, if you go and eat pizza in a restaurant in Lahore, you'd find that they use a lot more spices. If you go up north, cities like Islamabad, Peshawar, the same pizza has got lesser spices. And many other stores do that. Many other brands, many other um restaurants do those type of things. The same restaurant, which would be in one city as well as another city, when they move down south, cities like Lahore, Karachi, they add more spices to their food. And that's how they modify the products and the services they sell. Again, we see that in the advertising, the type of advertising you use, how you're advertising to people. In the last elections, uh, Imran Khan and the PTI government used this very effectively. So what they were segmenting, they were targeting a more younger generation. They wanted to get the younger lot to come out and vote for them. So what did they do? They spent a lot of money on their social media advertising as compared to the other political parties that were there. Consequently, the PTI government won the largest percentage of share from the younger group as compared to the other political parties. So they did that really well because they looked at the age segments and they found that because Pakistan's population is more of a pyramid shaped, where you have got fewer people uh, in the older group, and but a lot of people in the younger generations, generation X and Y. These guys use that for their advantage, and um, they targeted that younger consumer group. Okay, so I've got a question here. Recipes for international foods like shawarma, which is like a Middle Eastern Lebanese food. Yes, recipes for that also change. Interestingly, so again, you guys need to go out and check it out. Uh, so shawarma is Middle Eastern. It's a sandwich roll made out of lamb or beef. In Turkey, they call it doner kebab. Uh, and if you go to Europe, for example, you will notice that doner kebabs. across different countries have got slightly different tastes. Just as an example, the type of sauces that they use, and it varies from one region to another region. Uh, if you go to the UK and you eat a doner kebab, they will offer you vinegar as a sauce to put on top of your doner kebab. But if you go to Germany, where it is, I believe, doner kebab originated from the Turkish German community, you'll find that they will not offer you vinegar as a sauce. Similarly, when you go to countries like South Asia or even uh, areas in the UK where you have larger South Asian community, predominantly the Pakistani and the Bangladeshi, because the Indians don't really eat beef, you'll find that those guys, they will offer you spicy sauces to put on top of your doner kebab. Again, something you'll not find in other parts of the world. All right, guys. Does anybody, if anybody has any questions, you can shoot the questions down to me now. If you don't have any questions, uh, I will see you guys next class, which is on Wednesday. Those people who were not able to join us, please do tell them to join us. Come to YouTube, my channel, uh, sign up, and turn on the notifications so you'll know when I'm online. And on the LMS, I will be posting um, assessments. So the assessment for this week, I'll be posting towards the end of the week. Yes, that's a good point. I will be saving these sessions also, and I'll be posting them online to the channel. So those people who've missed it, or if you want to come back and listen to uh, the lecture, you can do that at a later point in time. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you guys next class. See you guys. Oh, it'll be good if you guys put your pictures on there on the live chat, because then I can see who you guys are. Sorry, I don't remember the names. So, but then when I see your picture, I can see who's there. So, Muhammad Asadullah, your picture is like really really far away. It looks like you're quite far. All right, guys. Thank you. Take care and see you uh, next class.